Can you grieve a pregnancy you chose to end? I'm Bianca from Bianca Johnson Empowerment. I've experienced 8 pregnancies and 6 losses. 2 of those losses were choices I made. Today I want to talk about those. There are 2 words that get used almost interchangeably: abortion and termination. Medically, they mean the same thing: ending a pregnancy before 24 weeks. Culturally, we've split them. Abortion is the medical term that is the most emotionally charged term. It's often used to indicate there was a choice made. Termination as a term feels less emotionally charged and is chosen by a lot of pregnant people. TFMR, or termination for medical reasons, is the term used when there's a medical reason behind the choice. My fertility journey started and ended with abortions. I often call them the exclamation marks of my fertility journey. One was a choice to end a pregnancy that was unplanned. The other was a choice to end a pregnancy that was not going to result in a baby. 2 very different reasons, 2 very big decisions, 2 pregnancies that made me who I am. In the year 2000, I found out that I was pregnant while I was living in London. I was living in a youth hostel. I was between rentals. My job at the time was selling gas and electricity door to door. I was barely making a paycheck to paycheck, and pregnancy was not something that I could comfortably afford or even contemplate at the time. In the very beginning, I was very much in denial. I hoped that if I just didn't acknowledge that I was pregnant, that the pregnancy would go away, which, as I'm sure the vast majority of people who've ever had an unplanned pregnancy know, doesn't really happen. But eventually I had to acknowledge that it wasn't going away and that I had to make a decision. And as difficult as that decision was, I knew that I was not in the position to bring a child into the world and have them live a wonderful, happy, healthy life. It was a huge decision for me. As I mentioned in a previous video, the only thing I ever wanted to be was a mom, and choosing to end a pregnancy felt like a huge decision, like I was ending my chances. But I also knew in my head and my heart that it was neither the right time nor the right place for me to bring a child into the world. And I was definitely not going to add to the incapacitated social services in just about every country that involves children. I made that decision from a loving heart, knowing that I wanted something better for the child or children that I brought into this world. Choosing to end a pregnancy doesn't erase the love you felt for that baby. In 2019, we found out I was pregnant again. This one we chose to end for a completely different reason. This was my last pregnancy, my 8th pregnancy, and my 7th in 7 years, as it turned out. I had a beautiful birthing experience with my daughter and felt much more positive about pregnancy and less scared. And so I had chosen to just have a GP for this, but he insisted that I go for the 12-week scan with a radiographer, the same one that we'd had with my daughter. And I remember walking in and saying, "No tears today," because after I'd heard the heartbeat with Ayla, the tears just streamed and streamed in that appointment because I was so relieved that I was pregnant and that everything was going okay. And I lay down and she started the scan and I heard the heartbeat, and I let the breath go that I was holding, because anyone who's ever experienced multiple pregnancy losses, they know that every scan, you hold your breath. I let the breath go, and then I realized that her stance had stiffened. And I looked at the screen and realized that things didn't look quite right. Our initial fold measured over 7 mils when they're hoping for 2.5 mil. And we were told that the baby had cystic hygroma, which is a lymphatic draining problem. And it felt like the world was falling on my head again. What followed was 2 weeks of hospital stays, testing, awful doctor's appointments, blood tests, everything you can think of under the sun, and waiting, uncomfortable waiting, all while I still parented my 2 children. Eventually, after the 2 weeks, we were given a Down syndrome diagnosis, and the initial fold measure had grown another 2 mil. It was incredibly poor prognosis, and I was hospitalized. I was scheduled to have a DNC, and I was given medication the night before to soften the cervix without a huge amount of information provided to me. What followed was a very traumatic evening, which ended in me delivering my baby in the dark on the toilet alone and experiencing staff who clearly held me in contempt for making the choice that I had. It was a very traumatic hospital stay, and what came out of that was rage and a desire to change the world and how it sees people who make these choices. And so I started the Baby Bryce Foundation, where I have been offering peer support to pregnancy loss moms for years. I have now started Bianca Johnson Empowerment to be the voice to speak about these topics. Making a choice to save your child from suffering doesn't mean you didn't want that child. Choosing to protect your own health doesn't mean you didn't want that child either. People end pregnancies for all kinds of reasons, and every single one of them is allowed to grieve. Ending a pregnancy, whether it was wanted or unplanned, does not mean you are not entitled to grief. If you choose not to, that is absolutely your prerogative. But the choice needs to be yours and not dictated by society or your culture or anything like that. Whether it's an unplanned pregnancy, whether the timing is wrong, or your finances are such that you can't support another child, whether there's something to do with relationships and the circumstances that you're in, whether it's a diagnosis for the child or a health risk to the parent. Even though a choice is made to end that pregnancy, a life was still imagined the moment those 2 lines appeared. I think one of the stories that's often not mentioned is the pressure from an external source to end the pregnancy. Like a friend of mine whose partner's parents insisted on it and even made the appointment and took her to the appointment. Or whether it's cultural, political influences that force or strongly suggest that the decision is made. No one can judge someone who chooses to end a pregnancy because they don't know what's going on in that person's mind. And that is why I hold every kind of loss the same way. Chosen or not, it's still a loss, and it still gets to be grieved. If this is the first time someone's told you that your grief counts, please subscribe. There's a whole series on this. No matter how the pregnancy was lost, it still matters. Your grief still matters. Tell me in the comments, has anyone ever made you feel like you didn't have the right to grieve your choice? If you know someone who's carried this quietly because they were scared of being judged, please send them this video. And if you are looking to work through your own feelings about your pregnancy loss, you can sign up for my free Finding Yourself After Pregnancy Loss series. It's 5 days of emails and videos that give you tools to find your way back to yourself. And I'll be here every week with new videos, sharing my experiences, showing what life after pregnancy loss can look like and how to thrive, giving you tools for carrying your grief. I'm Bianca Johnson, and I'm here to help you navigate, transform, and thrive on life's journey, whatever that looks like. I'll see you next week.